Welcome to the Penguin Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Erik Tate. Joining me, as always, my good buddy, Nick Lacapo. Nick, how you doing?
And something I never thought I would have. So this is the original, right? This is, for those audio only, this is my Little League baseball card from 1989. So if those collectors out there, it's probably one of one at this point. So
you still have the hair back then.
Yeah, there's some hair under that hat right there. It's a good one. But I'm making a change in my show, so I just ordered up. Look at this. Look how many.
Whoa!
I mean, there's 100 more over here. But
that is crazy.
Ridiculous. My Little League baseball card's going into my Magic show, so I had to order a bunch. Talk about the world that we're only magicians, right? Like, why do I have 100 of my Little League baseball card from 1989? Well, that's why. So.
Any hints as to what?
Oh, it's for my impossible location thing. I wanted to try changing up the card.
All right.
And possibly have some sort of, there's some details on the back of there. So, maybe you could do some confabulation type stuff. I don't know. I just wanted to change the object and see what happens.
I love the idea of like your childhood baseball card showing up in your show. Like what, because like obviously you're gonna give it away, like if there's
right. Well, I mean, people have seen it. It's like in my Magic Castle set, like it's on YouTube. I do a souvenir autographed card.
Oh yeah, okay.
In a case, in a plastic case, like it has like a valuable thing, and I give it away, and then the borrowed bill ends up inside of that card on the inside of that plastic case. Yada yada yada. Anyway, you can do an autographed playing card into a case, but I've played around with like, oh, maybe this will be a Houdini autograph card, like some like artifact. That's why it's in the plastic case or whatever. But I thought it'd be a little bit more fun and let's experiment with my old baseball card. Because on the back here, it's like, it's a Little League card. So it says Nick's favorite player and Nick's favorite team.
Oh, that's awesome.
So like those are either forces or who knows what. So I don't know. We'll figure it out.
That is super cool.
Maybe it opens more doors than I need at the moment, but forget it.
I gotta get on putting new stuff in my show. That's all right. I'm committing to learning a new trick tonight. I actually added some new tricks to the restaurant set this week. I was doing mental photography all week, which is, how long has it been since you've picked up one of those?
Forever.
Yeah.
Not since Bill Malone made me do it after seeing him do it on his DVD set back in 2000s.
That trick is so good. And
there was somebody that came to Penguin Live that was super hot on it.
Yeah.
I want to say it was like the David Heroes of the world. There it was somebody no, you know who it was? It was it'll come to me. Keep talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like the thing is, I first encountered it in a pit shop when I worked in this pit shop it was like a magic counter in this theater I worked at called the Comedy Barn. It was in Pigeon Forge. And there's a great routine. If you've never seen mental photography before, like you have this blank deck of cards and then it like prints the faces and then it prints the backs and then it prints the whole deck and then it goes back to being blank. And there's just like, there's nothing that can prepare a layperson for that deck, because it just sort of like comes into being and then magically goes away. And yeah, it's not examinable, but you're never offering it up to them. But I do a thing with it where I'm like, it's printed on psychic paper. So if you think of a card and I'm like peeking the card that I'm cutting to so I can name it before I cut to it. And I do this little joke where I have somebody else name it. I can do any card, like name one. And they'll say like, the 7 of clubs. And I'll say, wrong, I was thinking of the King of Hearts, and cut the deck and show the King of Hearts. But I've learned that I can like kind of know how many, like there's like 26 faces in the deck and I see them a lot. So I haven't got them memorized, but I kind of know where they are, or like what's there. And so I hit it perfectly 5 times at the restaurant this week, where people would name a card and then they would say, Queen of Spades, and I would be ready with the Queen of Spades. But then also there was a couple of times where someone would set it and they didn't hit it, and I would do the joke, but then I could like thumb through, and because I was like, oh, I know there's a 2 of clubs in this deck. So I go, oh, you wanted the 2 of clubs? We can print the 2 of clubs. And there's no audience that is ready for that moment. I mean, it's so strong. And I'm like, I'm doing it after a coin trick. So I do my coins across, and then I pull the deck out and I go, here, let me show you the good stuff. I'll show you a card trick. And when this blank deck comes out, I go, oh, I didn't mean to bring this. It's a really fun, like, what the heck is going on moment. But it's opening the doors to some super strong magic.
It's a crazy trick.
Yeah.
I remembered. Well, I didn't remember. So at first, I had somebody in mind, and it turned out I was correct. But then I thought it was somebody else because it was a trade show guy. So there's a trade show guy that came to Penguin Live and was like touted for his mental photography routine and how he always performs it at trade shows.
Yeah.
Because I think he teaches how to like customize it for the company that you're working for or whatever.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Anyway, I thought it was Seth Kramer because Seth Kramer is like the king of the trade show lecture. But then it was my original thought in my head, which is David Hira.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need some extra, I don't know what he did differently. I can't remember at this point. But I'm looking at the page right now. Mental photography surprise.
Mm-hmm.
David's climax to this wonderful stock trick leaves audiences gasping and laughing out of the sheer surprise. Take it out of the drawer and dust it off. You'll use it all the time.
Well, I think I'm going to have to go check that out. It's in David's lecture?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
David Hira live.
I'll check that out.
And side note,
yeah.
this would be like a good audience viewer thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we both know that the Penguin Magic website is what it is. And I love our search engine because it's just completely not what you want it to be.
Yeah.
And you get sometimes incredible search results.
Mm-hmm.
I typed in, so like I would love people's hilarious search results. I typed in trade show Penguin Live.
Okay.
Right? Like, hey, I want to learn about trade shows. Anyway, I put it in as 2 words. Are you looking it up? The top result. The top result is Chris Angel.
I know. Yeah, because when you're looking for that hot trade show magic, Chris Angel is the one you want to go check out.
And if you put it as 1 word, trade show, only 1 search result, and it's Adam Christing, which maybe he talks about trade shows in there. I don't know. But you don't get Seth Kramer or you don't get David, who both like crush trade shows all the time. So anyway,
that is
Seth's lecture is literally only trade shows.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that is so funny. Oh.
So if you guys have any great, like, if you find any great search results that just don't make any sense, please send them to me because I like to send them up the ladder a little bit too and be like, hey, look how ridiculous this is. And that Chris Angel one is pretty damn good.
I think I love it when people send us like weird Easter eggs about our website because like we get it, but also it's there's something at this point where it's like charming. Like if it ever went away, we'd be like you wouldn't even know what to do.
Who knows? Yeah, well, yeah, it's a rabbit hole of why, but
hey,
a lot of reasons.
Speaking of the website, what came out this week? I think Simon Says.
Simon Says.
Oh, okay, so. This trick is pretty fun because it's a mark deck, but it's disguised as like a party game, like a guess, like a there's a celebrity's name on it, and then there's like words you can't say, and you gotta and the game works too, which is the wild part.
Yeah, the game totally works, but it has a secret, so you can play the game with the spectators, but then you can play it a couple more times and just impossibly already know what they're looking at because of the very clever marking system that's on this thing.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the marking system's useful, and I know that Simon Lipkin, who put this trick out with us, uses this deck all the time. But I mean, when I first got my hands on it on the prototype, I was immediately reading the marks. It's like a reader system, but like not almost.
Yeah, it's different. It's very clever, very very clever.
Yeah, your audience will never see it.
No, it's impossible. Yeah. It's not like they see it either, right? It's not like they're like, oh, I see this like thing. You wouldn't know what it is, So
yeah, it's like I don't want to like spoil it for people because I think like learning how this marking system works is like part of the fun with this one.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's a ton of stuff to do with it.
Yeah, no, a lot. He's got a lot of routines on
Mhm.
there. I know a lot of people these days have been looking for like non-playing card tricks,
Yeah,
decks, and this checks a lot of boxes.
it really
Because
does.
yeah, you're thinking of people. So he's got what looks like three routines on there
Yeah, there's
that you'll get.
so I watched the entire tutorial. So I'm starting to like I watch a lot of Magic tutorials to write the ad copy for these, and so I'm trying to like give the our customers like as much information as possible, like not just to hype up the trick, but like to like let you know everything that you're getting. And he teaches these three routines that are really good, and like the main routine is fun because you play the game, and then you play the game sort of psychically and are able to tell them which one celebrity they're thinking of. But he's got these like other routines that are like they're really fun and like almost to me like more interesting. And then he gives you a ton of like additional little ideas where like I mean like imagine doing like an out of this world but with like male and female celebrities or historical figures and sports heroes or something like that. Like there's just some
Yeah,
like really cool stuff.
yeah, it's a great project. So if
Yeah.
that interests you, I think you'd love it. The marking system's awesome. So
Yeah, so everyone should go check it out. Let's. So we actually got a request this week from I'm trying to find the guy. I think his name is Mark. Yeah, so I think it's Mark or no, Matt. Matt Habbins from the UK
hmm
is asking. He says he has very bad performance anxiety. Is there a suggestion for people who have the same? And he also sort of adds in, I'm sure it's different between seasoned performers and amateurs, which is kind of an interesting thing, like talking about, like stage fright, performance anxiety, that kind of stuff. Because I know, like,
mm,
we talked about this a little bit in the office, and neither of us really have it anymore.
mm.
But you still have it in certain situations, right?
I wish I could get it back. Maybe.
It does,
I know
like,
it's been a long time.
it keeps you sharp, right? Like,
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I don't know. Like the most recent example I can give was I was like a week ago. I was at the Magic Castle,
mm-hmm,
and which is like it's a pretty high stakes spot to be in already. Hosting
mm-hmm,
the stage show.
mm-hmm,
Curtain goes up. I'm standing center stage. I'm the first person anybody sees. I mean, it's opening the show.
mm-hmm.
It's got to be good. But well, also the only shows that I would like even it would even like creep into my head that I need to be a little bit more on my game would be like when there's people I really respect in the crowd from the Magic community,
Yeah.
which ultimately doesn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
right? But at the same time, I'm like, oh, like Rob Zabrecki's at the show. I don't think he's ever seen me perform before. Oh, Steve Valentine's here.
Yeah.
He's probably never seen me on stage before.
Yeah.
Okay, let's make sure we don't mess any of this up this time. That's probably about as much as I can get
Yeah.
to at this point. Live TV is kind of a thing, but
Yeah.
like if you're trying to like it's everybody's situation is different at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure there's people that have a hard time just showing somebody a card trick at a party.
Oh yeah.
Um, the biggest thing you can do, I would have to imagine, is, and this is where I'm at, is
Mm-hmm.
I just know the material I'm doing. I know it.
Yeah.
I know every inch of it. I know what can happen in all different scenarios. And I also know that if it doesn't go right, none of it matters.
Yeah.
So, um, therefore, that part of it is completely erased,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that accounts for in the grand scheme of being nervous. There's the other side of it where you're just talking in front of people, which I know bothers people, but that
Mm-hmm.
bothered me at one point. It's just that I did an absurd amount of magic shows
Mm-hmm.
at Universal Studios, and it just got completely erased from my body.
Yeah.
So, and now it's just kind of like what I do. If you told me I would be like a public speaker, I would have never,
Yeah.
ever, ever in a million years believed you, because I'm sure, yeah, there was a hurdle there to get over it, but the magic was always so much fun to do and so much fun to share with people that
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to let like a little bit of nerves get in the way of that.
Yeah. Like, I think that something you hit on there was like pretty important, which is just like A, doing it, and B, realizing if you screw up that it's not the end of the world.
It really isn't.
I mean, like when I was 18, 19, I was on stage at the Comedy Barn juggling and passing clubs and passing torches with my my old juggling partner, Mark McGinley. And I mean, we did, you know, at least one show a night, 7 days a week. But in the summer, it'd be 2 shows, sometimes 3 shows a night in front of sold out crowds. Like 2,000 people fit in that theater. So you just kind of do it over and over again. And that sort of facing the fear is really the only way you can do it.
Yeah, it's part of the game. You got to. I mean, you can't get in this game unless you kind of get over the fear, right?
Yeah.
Some people never lose it. Like I've worked with, not to like Chad Long, one of my favorite performers. Chad is a nervous wreck before his sets, and it's crazy because Chad is like one of the greatest magicians you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
And Chad is always, but that's part of what makes him him.
Yeah.
Maybe I can't imagine dealing with that every time going on stage, but like, I don't know, maybe he's learned to embrace it over the years.
I think some of it is even my friends that I have that are still like terrified to go on stage, even though they're very competent performers, are, they're always worried about it going well. And, I think everybody has some anxiety about that. I know my biggest anxiety recently about it was like definitely like the FISM stuff, like doing the competing. You put me in front of magicians and I shake like a leaf.
And it's an unknown situation. Like you only got into the competition game this first time, right?
Yeah.
If you did that circuit again,
it'd be different.
It'd be completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and always like my first performance, my first 2 shows at the Castle, I'm always nervous. Those are like the worst shows to see me at, because like I'm still doing good stuff, but I'm not like comfortable in the space yet. Like it's
always Jack's always at the first show too, who books the talent at the Castle.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, why you got to come to the first show, Jack?
Yeah, like let me.
Well, I understand why, but
let me get the nerves out, and then like, so like that's part of it. For the competition stuff, there was like, I definitely worked with my therapist. We talked about this. If you want to like get the full detail, go back and listen to the FISM episode that you edited, where I talk about like. Right, I was doing like this stuff called tapping therapy that you can look up on YouTube, or like she was doing like post-hypnotic suggestions so that like whenever the wool on the table, whenever it hit my wrist, it would like put me into a relaxed state. Like we did some crazy stuff, but we're also talking like, world championships stuff. So you're gonna try everything. You're gonna juice whatever you can. I think though I think one of the best things you can do is, if you have performance anxiety about doing close-up, is try and figure out how to do a restaurant gig, because it's
gonna go away.
It'll get beaten out of you in
it has to
2 shifts. I mean, I know I talk about the restaurant here a lot, but like that is a lot of what I'm doing these days, and I love it. But I'll do 40, 50 reps in a 2-hour thing,
and you'll actually find out if you like it or not too.
Yeah,
because if it does take a long time to kind of rub away, you'll just have to make that make that choice of like, well, maybe I hate doing corporate shows and all that other stuff, like private parties. You know what? Private parties probably give me the most anxiety, just because I'm walking into an unknown situation. I want to make sure I do a good job. Yeah. I really don't enjoy the business aspect of any of that stuff, and it's like, so I just don't do it. I don't do them. I say no to all that stuff. You can find the venue and the space that you want to perform in, the one that gives you the least amount of worry, and stay there, and good things will come from it eventually. You might not see the path right away, but at some point you'll figure it out.
You and I definitely sort of fell into this, like, we have our stuff that we have to do for work, where we got to go out and get these like crazy reactions for the demos and stuff. But you can definitely tell the areas that we like to work, because that's really where you only hear about us going, which is these theater circuits. And then like I do the restaurant because, I just bought a house and I need to pay my mortgage. But I really like having that place to like work out new tricks before I take them out to Penguin. Like before we go into the field. Like I got this new Juan Pablo trick that I just got assigned. And, you know, trying to figure out that routine is like doing it over and over again. Like I'm nervous when I go into it just because I don't quite know where it's all going yet. But it's that repetition of doing it in that area. And I like being in that restaurant. I think if other restaurants asked me to perform, I might not do it. I think it's just because I like the food, I like the atmosphere, I like the people. And that's kind of why I'm there.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's just, look, learning the material to the point where you don't have to think about it. And I know that's one thing to say. It's another thing to put that into practice. Like what that means different things for different people. And it depends on what trick you're working on. Like I'm at a level now where I know I can write to a certain point where I will feel comfortable enough just kind of like being on stage and trying it out and then learning, because you can't learn all of it until you do it for somebody. But if you're working on, I mean, I don't know, like, geez, the flight deck. Right. Like know the marks. You got to know them. You no stumbling before you get out there. You got no excuse. You know, that's a thing that you can control before you leave the house to go do whatever it is, because that's going to erase half the battle. You know, and then when you get out there, presentationally, if there's things that keep popping up, well, you're doing something wrong, or there's something wrong with your presentation. You just got to go back home, get back in the lab and write it out, you know, like, okay, well, why is that happening? Let me change the way I phrase this part of the thing, and then go out and try it again. But I mean, and I know but the nerves, it's just a never ending battle, I guess, until, but that'll help. That'll certainly help. It has to. I can't imagine that not.
So,
and then an absurd amount of performance time. Cure the rest.
How do you practice? I'm curious. So you get a new trick, right? So what's something we can talk about that like you did recently?
Like there's new tricks all the time. I mean, wow, here's one right here. Not out yet. Magic 8-ball.
New Roddy McGee trick on the way, kids.
All right. Oh, wow. We're just flashing stuff here. All sorts of new stuff. So many like if you get as deep into magic as like, and I'm not just saying me, I'm sure lots of people have done as many tricks as I have at this point, but there's so many tricks that follow the same path, the same through line, the same plots, the same this, the same that. And it's a matter of getting practice on all the different genres of, let's just take card tricks, for example. You know, maybe you out there has done one triumph. Well, I've done 40 of them. Some of you out there have done 2 out of this world. I've done 50 of them. Here's a Monty routine. Okay, I've learned 30 of them at this point. Like anything else, if you know that many, if you have that much information about a certain trick, well, when you get a new one in, you basically already know how to do it. Yes, you have to learn the intricacies of the new method or whatever they're talking about, but that way I don't have to practice it from start to finish. I just need to know the basic secret and like what we're trying to accomplish. Okay. Then I'll feel comfortable going out there and doing it, because, and I'm not just talking about the moves, I'm talking about what comes out of my mouth. I already know like how to get from A to Z, you know, and just finish the trick correctly. So my level of comfort and practice is like probably because of my job, it's actually lower than it needs to be. I need to be able to get this thing out the door and start filming right away. But the filming really is what teaches me the trick at this point. I need to know the trick, obviously, but the putting it in front of people teaches it to me. And I honestly, and you've seen it without filming, like I do not care if the trick doesn't work or whatever. I'm like, all right, let's move on. Sorry, guys. Here, let me show you something good before I leave. Okay, great. And then see you later.
I think I agree with you for most of that stuff. I think where it becomes tricky and where I actually have to like go into my office and like talk it out like to an empty room is when it's something that is like totally new. Like So when I was working on Laced Up is a great example of that, right? Like I can take just about any card trick you want, practice it for 10 minutes, know the moves, kind of know where I want to go presentationally, and then sort of like learn through play to get it out there. But Laced Up, there's nothing in my repertoire
No, yeah,
that could prepare you for that. So for me,
Laced Up was a tough one.
Yeah, you sort of, I ended up like going, like getting it all built and watching the tutorial and everything like that. I mean, watching the raw footage of it because I shot it. And then like actually like walking through and saying it loud over and over again and kind of figuring out like what needed to come out of my mouth when, and then like, oh, Donovan's way of handling it looks really great, but it doesn't really work in my hands. So I have to like sort of, I got to use both hands, because when I use one hand, just because of the way my fingers are shaped or whatever, it doesn't look as good as the way he does it. So I need to do kind of these things. And there's like that mirror practice, like an hour of mirror practice of kind of going like, but I think the most important thing is not thinking because I find it's actually saying it, like verbalizing it. Because
there's certain tricks that like a card trick that I was kind of talking about. There's tons of byplay with spectators.
Yeah.
Laced Up, you can just do it as a scripted piece.
Yeah.
Almost to music, right? Like, not that you would ever do that, but so you can sit in the house, lay out your script, do the moves, say the things, and get it from A to Z.
Although I do like what you said there about you could do it silently to music, but you wouldn't. I think an Instagram challenge. If you have Laced Up, go create a performance, film it with your phone to music, and then submit it to the Penguin Magic Instagram. And we have no authority to run a contest, but it will make the social media people happy, and maybe we'll shout you out on the podcast if we get something in there. And you know what? We're not even going to tell the social media team. We're gonna put this out there in the podcast, and we're gonna let them see this thing happen organically.
No, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
There's one other thing about the nerves that like, and I don't know if this is really the case, and I'm not sure I even have the solution, but if you are trying to be something that you're not, for example, like a mind reader, and you're actually trying to pull that off for real, that's a different skill set.
Yes.
As far as like, I'm nervous that they're going to know that I can't actually read their mind is a different thing. And that's not an area that I even know about, but I know that like acting lessons would probably be in your future if you need that help, because that would, if you're trying to create a situation where you're displaying powers that you don't actually have, there's only, again, I guess it does still kind of fall under the same rules. You're gonna need to do it in front of people to find out what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
But you're probably gonna want a strong skill set of like who your character is and how do you know what you know how to do and why it works and all those things. But maybe that's for a different day.
Yeah, I get asked all the time, like, hey, where can I like find more places to work on magic? And I think really what it comes down to is you need to be able to get sort of in front of people over and over again. And it's not just like doing the moves, it's getting comfortable like speaking in front of people in like a commanding way. And every city has an improv, the place you can take lessons on improv. And like learning how to say yes and rather than like shutting somebody down or like ignoring them, like learning to engage with them in sort of playful stuff is largely what we do. And then we sprinkle the miracles around it. But I just advise anyone wanting to get more comfortable on stage or comfortable even doing close-up is take a couple of improv classes and get out in front of people.
Just get in any situation where you have to talk to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, that's it.
Yeah.
If you're not talking to people, I mean, we got bad news for you. That's what you got to do when you do magic tricks.
80% of doing magic is talking to people. Like,
no doubt.
All right. Well, I think this is a good discussion, and I'm going to cut us off here, mainly because I know that the main event is really long this week. So I got Todd Robbins on a Zoom call.
Yeah, that's cool.
And
that's cool.
We talked about Sideshow and the Speakeasy Magick, because he's like assembled an Avengers of magicians up
crazy out
New
there.
York City, and it's insanity.
Did you go to the new one yet? The new spot?
I haven't been to the new spot. And
you went to the old one?
I know. I haven't gotten.
Oh, you haven't even been. Oh,
I've only been to New York City once.
Oh wow.
I know.
Wow.
I need to fix that.
The new spot fooled me bad when because I went to the old one.
Yeah.
Loved the old one.
Yeah.
And then the new one, did you already talk to him?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No,
okay.
so
you never know when we film this if you've already talked to him, if you haven't or not.
I talked to him, like we record these on like Tuesday morning while we're having coffee and waking up. But I talked to him on Friday afternoon.
Got it.
Yeah. It was right before he hosted the AMA Awards.
Yeah. The new spot they got, it almost like lulled me to sleep for a minute, where I was like, I kind of like the old spot. And then they completely fooled me, and
oh, that's cool,
and it turned into the best. I can't say anything because it's
you got to see
part of the experience. Yeah, it's so good. You got to go.
All right, well, I'm going to kick things over to myself and Todd Robbins. Nick, I'll see you next week. Listeners, keep sending us stuff to talk about, and don't forget about that Instagram challenge. Perform laced up to music and send it to our Instagram.
And bad search results.
We want to see bad search results. All right, over to the main event. Thanks, as always, to Nick for joining me on the show. On to the main event. Todd Robbins doesn't just have a passion for Sideshow, he is one of the undisputed masters of the art. Based in New York City, he spent decades taking the arcane and unusual and turning it into one of the most intriguing and incredible acts that you've ever seen. His work is synonymous with Coney Island, where he worked for decades as a featured performer in the Coney Island Sideshow. He's also a producer, director, writer, and one of the minds behind the hottest show in New York City, Speakeasy Magick. I grabbed some of Todd's time via Zoom, and now you get to join our conversation. Todd Robbins, thanks so much for joining me here on the Penguin Magic Podcast. I am thrilled to speak to you. I've been a fan of your work for a long time, and seeing you at the Magic Castle in my early 20s was one of the highlights of my time as a member there.
Who are you? What do you want? Who are you? Well, thank you. That's so sweet of you to say. But that money's been spent, so I'm here today. So.
I guess the first question I have for you is, what was it like being the very first member of the junior program at the Magic Castle?
Well, it actually starts earlier than that. I walked into the Magic Castle for the first time on August 17th, 1969. Mm-hmm. And it was in celebration of my 11th birthday. Yeah, you can do the math if you want to. And the way it worked out was that the guy who got me into magic, a little magic shop opened in our neighborhood in Southern California, he arranged for us to have brunch at the Magic Castle to celebrate my birthday. And we were in the Houdini room. It was not, the irony of it is, I don't think they had started up the Houdini seance yet, because there were two long tables in there, not the seance table that's in there now and has been in there since they started the seance. Anyway, and we had they had started the seance, because we did talk about the seance. I take that back. And I fell in love with the place and had, like I say, just gotten involved in magic and had just joined an organization called the Long Beach Mystics, with people like Stan Allen and Mike Caveney and Mark Kalin and on and on and on. And so several years later, I'd been doing shows, all over the place, been emceed the It's Amazing show, which Long Beach Mystics did every year, a big public show. Mm-hmm. And two of the people I worked with were Dick and Diana Zimmerman. And they made this announcement to all the young magicians in Southern California that the Magic Castle was going to start up a junior society. Oh, really? Where'd you get that idea from? Oh, Long Beach. Anyway, so there was a big town meeting at the castle. It was on a Saturday afternoon, and several hundred people showed up, kids and their parents. And Diana Zimmerman stood on a chair in the dining room and kind of explained what it was going to be all about. And there were going to be auditions, and they're going to accept 30 magicians and young magicians. And they were hoping that they could get 20 stage acts and maybe 10 close-up magicians, because no one was doing close-up at that time. This is like 1975, 76. And I guess 75. And but everyone was doing a stage act at that time. So we filled out the information. They sent out a little notice of when the audition was going to be. And I got mine in the mail, and I wasn't going to be in town. I was going to be out on vacation with my family. I wasn't going to be around. So I called Diana and I said, I'm really sorry, I can't be there. You said like every 6 months you're going to do you're going to do auditions, I should say, because they're going to be kids going to school, colleges, or their age out and become 21 and whatever. So I said, when you do the next round of auditions, like the audition, she said, Dick and I have worked with you a number of times. We know what you do. So Mark Kalin is not available either. So the two of you will be the first junior members. You don't have to audition.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And then it is so wonderful now, all these years later, to be here in LA to MC the Academy of Magical Arts Awards ceremony this Friday. And also, I've been kind of bopping in and out of LA for this last year for a week or two at various times to redo the Houdini seance for the castle.
Oh, that's exciting.
So this is very much kind of a homecoming. It's been a really wonderful thing. And there are a few things better than working with Rob Zabrecki and Stuart McLeod on this, and Brandy LaPlante has just joined the team as our sort of covert assistant on this. She will not be seen, but her presence will be felt. So it's fun. They did 2 performances of the last night for invitated. Boy, jet lag. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
That and bourbon. So anyway, for an invitation or invited group, invitational audience, whatever you call it. And so there were 2 performances of it, and it's a little rough, but it's fun. It's going to be a thing that's going to scare the shellac out of people.
as it absolutely should. Yeah. It's I think that your work is kind of fascinating because when did you start gravitating towards sideshow and spooky stuff? Because it all came as a process of elimination. I mean, I when I was a kid, I wanted to see all the magic I could, so I watched everything I could. If there was a magician on the Tonight Show or anything, any TV stuff, any live shows I could see. And a sideshow came to our neighborhood when I was about 13 years old, somewhere like that. And I went into it. It was part of a carnival that was in the community. There's a fundraiser for a school. And there was a sideshow. And one of the banners said the Master Magician. And I went in and saw it. And the magic act was actually pretty weak, but the rest of it was kind of captured my imagination. And the reason was because whatever magician, young magician, when they come to it, they really want to be Harry Potter. They want to do magic for real. Everyone wants to do that. Yeah.
And then you discover it's tricks, cool tricks, but it's all, the foundation of it is deception. And I always was hoping that there was something real. And so I would see all the magic I could. And I went in and I saw the magic act, which was kind of a throwaway, but I discovered later on, it was done early on in the show as the audience is coming in and buying the tickets. The magic act was usually the first act of the 10-in-1 Sideshow, so that as people are coming in, if there are a handful of people come in, it's very quick. They do one trick and then you're done. You go on with the rest of the show, get that show over with, start another show. If there's a lot of people coming in, the magician can do trick after trick after trick until everyone has come in, and then they finish, and then it goes on with the sword swallower and fire eater and person, lying down on a bed of nails and things like that. And there was those acts, though the magic act was kind of a throwaway. It was those acts that really grabbed me, because here was extraordinary ability beyond the capability of the average person. And if you think about that, that's kind of a definition of real magic.
Yeah.
So I went back to the local magic shop, which happened to be a few blocks away, and I would hang out there. And there were always a bunch of old timers that were hanging out in the front room on a Saturday, like a little social club. And these guys were ancient. They had to be like 40 years old. And one of them said, "Oh, you're late. Where you been?" And I said, "I saw a sideshow around the corner at this carnival. It was great. It was sword swallower, fire eater, and I really like to learn how to do all that stuff." And one of the guys, a guy named Ralph Maccabee, who originally from Texas, and he had worked in a sideshow, and he knew how to eat fire and hammer a nail into his nose. And though he didn't really do them, I mean, he did a little fire eating in his stage act, but he would come out in a white tuxedo jacket and do really lovely sleight of hand stuff, and then end off with doing fire eating, because you can't really follow that. You can't go back to card tricks after that. So he said, he was a neighbor of mine, and he said, "I can teach you how to do that. Just don't tell your parents." Cool. I was hooked. So I learned a number of the things. I learned the blockhead act, hammering a nail in my nose, and I learned how to eat fire, but I didn't really do it. And the reason I didn't do it, it was one of these things I had forgotten about. There was a book, and it was a fire eating book.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to insult anyone by saying what I'm about to say, but it was the gayest thing I've ever seen. Okay. The book had illustrations of some Australian bodybuilder who did this fire eating act in a bejeweled G-string and his body all coiled up. And I went, "Is that how you have to do it? I don't want to do that."
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. And I came across the book years later at like a swap meeting, like, but it just sort of scarred me. So I kind of put it aside. However, I did learn all that stuff. And the reason I kind of gravitated towards it, though I didn't do it at the beginning, was because I was surrounded by Mike Weber. I was surrounded by Armando Lucero. I was surrounded by Mark Kalin, Dirk Arthur. And they started to sort of eliminate, because of the high level of where they were functioning with whatever they chose to do. When you run with people like that, you go, "Well, there's no need for me to do a bird act. There's no need for me to do a manip act on stage. There's no need for me to do close-up. So what the hell is left over? I can kind of make people laugh, so I'll do kind of a comedy magic act." And the sideshow stuff is interesting. I don't know if I'll ever do it, but it's interesting. So I'll learn that because no one else is doing that. And then in the early 80s, I had moved from California to New York. And MTV had a weird little variety show that they were doing. And they wanted something unusual. They didn't want magic. So I had learned how to stick my hand in an animal trap and have it snap shut. The Daring Spring Trap that you can buy from Abbott's Magic Company. Oh, actually, you probably buy it from Penguin. I bet you it's in the Penguin catalog.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a surprise. Well, it will be now. And I learned how to do it, and years before. And so I went out and found in a secondhand store, I found a trap, and I worked it up, a little routine, and I did it on the show. And I was like, "Well, now I've got this damn thing. I might as well put it in the act." And I was doing comedy magic, and I did that. And people would come up afterwards and they'd go, "No, that trap thing, that had to be a trick. You said it wasn't a trick. You said it was real." Because you said, "Oh, well, that was a card trick I just did, but this is real." And I would kind of pull them in their attention and sort of engage them on a different level and then do the trap. And people come and say, "You can't really do that, can you? I mean, that had to be." And if it wasn't a trick, what goes into that? And I'm like, "Oh, this is a profound sense of amazement, different from anything I've ever really encountered." So I started to resurrect all the stuff that I learned and put it in little by little. I kind of pushed out all the magic and ended up doing an hour of sideshow stuff and started working in comedy clubs and colleges, universities.
It's if listeners haven't seen you work, they really need to, because it's presented with this sly, like, it's, man in a well-tailored suit, very, very,
yeah, I wanted to get away from the carny aspect of it and just kind of strip it down to what I thought was important and engaging about it. And it worked very well for, like I say, the colleges. And I also just found it intriguing on a level that these are things you think can't be done.
Yeah.
And if it is possible to eat fire, if it is possible to bite into a light bulb and chew on the glass and swallow it, if it is possible to stick your hand in an animal trap and hammer a nail into your nose, and if you think all of this was impossible and can't be done, and I've just shown you it can be done, then what else in life is possible?
Yeah.
What else do you think can't be done, maybe can be done? And that theme that I would play upon is what would get me booked in the colleges and get me booked back time and time again.
Yeah.
And I would at the end of my act, I'd say, if I've been a whole spiel that I would do.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, I'd say, if you've been amazed by anything you've seen me do, then my job is done and yours is just beginning.
Yeah.
And it would get a standing ovation. And so
I can absolutely see why it would. There's something really, I mean, you've already said this, but there is something incredibly compelling about these acts. And I think that when you actually remind people about how you can learn this kind of a thing, put your mind to it after you've seen somebody do something just
it kept, I would point up, it's a little hackneyed, but I would give proof.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power, that with the right knowledge you can do anything.
Yeah.
And it's not pie in the sky, motivational speaker thing. It was like, here's something that should be impossible, and yet I learned how to do it. I learned how to do it from people who did it day in and day out as a career in the sideshow, which is the most down and dirty and rough and tumble and grueling form of popular entertainment ever created. On a par with old style, the old burlesque.
Yeah.
That was challenging in a different way. But this was the bottom of the barrel of show business. As my old friend Melvin Burkhart once said, he said, I came from the sideshow where you didn't have to be good, you just had to do time. So and but he was extraordinarily good. But anyway, and so these things, and I would also joke that it's all based on physics and anatomy, and since everyone slept through physics and anatomy in school, it seems miraculous.
Yeah. When did you end up on Coney Island?
It was in 1992. A number of the old timers that had worked the show, there had been sideshows out there since the turn of the century, since about 1897. And the old shows had all died off in the 1970s. And then in the early 80s, a man named Dick Ziggin came out there, and he was a playwright, graduate of the Yale School of Drama. And it was a time in which theater companies were popping up in storefronts, and avant-garde theater was happening, and people were doing site-specific things. And he grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which was Barnum's hometown, and was kind of inundated with this respect for popular entertainment. So he took that background of his childhood and his training and came out to Coney Island and started up an organization called Coney Island, USA. And the idea was to do performance that was inspired and influenced and informed by the traditions of Coney Island. And someone made a suggestion, hey, you should do a sideshow. And he reached out to an old Sideshow troupe and brought them out there. And they did that for a number of years, and little by little, they all started to die off or retire.
Mm-hmm.
And in '92, he needed some fresh blood, and I'd already been doing the stuff for about almost a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the notice in the trade papers looking for performers, and I called him up, and I did a ballet, which is that sales pitch that is done out in front of a sideshow. But I was selling myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're going to see the man who amazed in music and found it confused. It's miraculous what you listen to, chill up in your spine when he takes a large nail and hammers it into the skull. And I did what's known as outside talking.
Mm-hmm.
And he was laughing, and he went, "Come in, and let's talk about it. Bring your stuff and come in." And it was a day in February or early March. It was cold. There was nothing going on in Coney Island.
Mm-hmm.
And he kept there was a little lobby bar in the building that the organization had at that time, and a little rundown theater with a little bar, and he would sit there because he lived on property there. And there were two German tourists that had bought 2 cups of hot chocolate because they came out to Coney Island, heard about Coney Island. Everything was closed except for Nathan's and this. And there was a little museum that they went to. And they were sitting there. And Dick said, you know, and they spent 50 cents each or $1 each for the hot chocolate. And Dick said, do something for him. And I did an hour for them. I did a whole act.
Yeah.
And he was dying, laughing because they were looking like, was ist los? Who is this? As I did the whole thing, and when I finished, Dick came up and shook my hand and said, "A kindred spirit. Mm-hmm. We start on Easter weekend." And I joined up, and I did the full season of '92, and then I would fill in. I think I did most of '93, and then I'd be sort of a relief pitcher because if the bearded lady was out sick, I would come in and eat glass, and because you do 10 acts, you need 10 acts.
Yeah.
And I could the front, and I was like I say, sort of designated hitter kind of thing, relief pitcher, whatever you want to call it. I could fill in and do almost anything in the show. So it just worked out that I was involved with them for years and years and years, and then kind of went off and then came back, and it would kind of come and go. I'm not doing anything out there now, which leads to a question that you didn't ask, but you were probably going to, which is what's going on with the Sideshow today.
Yeah.
And this is going to anger a lot of people, but it's dead. It doesn't exist in its natural habitat anymore. Mm-hmm. There's one nutty old time Sideshow guy who's just toxic beyond belief. Mm-hmm. There's another guy who's shady as hell who kind of takes out a show and does it at bike rallies and places like that, but it's not. It looks pretty, but it's not really the traditional Sideshow.
Yeah.
And the show at Coney Island has gotten away from many traditions and practices, and it's like a weird little variety show. And the form and function of the Sideshow is as much of its charm and joy as the acts that are being done. The way it is structured and functions is so glorious.
I think my favorite part of that story is that there's a German couple out there somewhere who has been telling the other end of this story for years of a very strange young man who would hammer nails into his face and eat light bulbs for them, and just them.
That's the great thing about it, is every once in a while something like that happens. I used to do a lot of colleges paired up with Stevie Starr, who was a professional regurgitator. Mm-hmm. Great act. One of the greatest acts in show business. Mm-hmm. And Stevie would do 45 minutes, and I would do about 30 minutes to open for him, eating glass, hammering a nail in my nose, blowing up a hot water bottle until it exploded, sticking my hand in an animal trap, and things like that. Mm-hmm. And when I'd finish, people would be cheering. I go, "Oh, no. A guy's going to come out here now and do an act, and you're going to forget I even was on the stage," as he swallowed things and coughed things back up for the next 45 minutes and had people laughing and gasping and gagging. And didn't want to watch, but they had to watch
Yeah.
what we did. It's just an extraordinary act. So we would perform, and often in our contracts were a thing of the school had to take us out to dinner. I didn't really care about that, but they would do that. And I think it was a lot of it had to do with the students wanting to kind of hang out with celebrities. And there was one time we were doing Pace University in a lower part of Manhattan, and we went out to an Irish pub that was around the corner, and it was a Halloween show, and it was kind of a cold day. We go to this thing, and we're having our dinner, and I had an overcoat and I had checked it, and we're going out, and there's this couple seated at a table by the bar near the door. And I go and grab my coat, and Stevie walks over to me and says, "Excuse me, can I need to check your salt and pepper shakers." And he picks up the salt and pepper shakers and he throws them in his mouth and he swallows them. He goes, "Yeah, okay, they're fine." Salt, pepper, and puts them down and walks out the door. And I'm watching this kind of fun, and they're stunned. They're like, whoa. And I walked over and I said, "Excuse me, did a man just come over here and do something very strange?" They said, "Yeah." I said, "Did he do this?" And I picked up the pepper shaker and I took out a nail and hammered a nail in my nose. "Did he do this?" And they went, "No." I said, "Okay, fine." And then I walked out the door. I would love to think that this was a first date. I have no idea who this couple was, but I would love to think it was a first date. I would love to think that they went on and had this glorious life, because it was many, many years ago. Children, and they tell the children of like the first date they had and this strange encounter. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea the ending of this story, or if it was like, "Check, please. I think we're done here. I think we should. This is just wrong," and they went their way. I don't know, but it was just one of those lovely things, like the German couple that saw this crazy guy.
So before I interrupted you with that, which, by the way, well worth it to hear that story. Could you, there's a lot of young people, I think, who listen to this show who are sort of fascinated by Sideshow. But one of the things you mentioned is that Sideshow is not really out there in its pure form. Could you take a few moments to describe the way a real Sideshow was, since there's nowhere for listeners to go see it?
Sure. The natural habitat for sideshows were carnivals. Well, first circuses, then amusement parks, and about the same time carnivals. And every circus, every carnival, every amusement park in America back in the 1920s and 30s had a sideshow, at least one. In Coney Island, there were 10 of them.
Wow.
And they were these glorious shows. On the carnival and the circus, they were in usually in a tent, the outside of which was festooned with colorful banners that depicted the acts on the inside. And there was a specific, again, form and function to those banners, that they were designed to capture the eye from across the amusement park, across the midway, and draw people in, and they stood there wondering what this was all about. And then there'd be an outside talker. Don't call him a barker. The correct term is outside talker, standing on a kind of little stage that was probably anywhere 3 to 6 feet high. And on the stage with him was sometimes performers from the inside. Sometimes in the bigger shows, there were acts that were just on the sideshow. That's all they would do. They would just do the ballet stage out front. And it's called ballet because that's short for ballyhoo, which was a term that was coined at the Chicago World's Fair of 1893. I mean, I could go on for hours about this, or it'll just seem like hours. And so he's doing what's known as a ballet, which is literally a sales pitch. His job is to literally talk people into buying a ticket and seeing the show. And he's the most important man. Women also did this. The important person in the sideshow. Because if you didn't have a good outside talker, you didn't have a show, because they're the ones that made sure you're making money. And they would do this sales pitch, which was like any other sales pitch. It got your attention. It built interest in what was this all about. It created a desire to see it, and then there was a call for action at the end saying, and if you get a ticket right now, when you go on the inside for 3 minutes and 3 minutes only, we're going to put the adult tickets aside, and you can go in for that kid's price. See the kid's price right over there? Harry, put the adult tickets aside, 3 minutes and 3 minutes only. Get in line, get your ticket, come on inside and see the big show on the inside. It's wild, wonderful, one of a kind. Everything you see depicted on the banners from way down there to way down there, you're going to see live on the inside. Oh, mercy, what a show you're going to see. And people would buy tickets, come in, and there'd be 10 acts and attractions. Now, sometimes performers would do more than one act. That was almost standard. So you didn't necessarily have 10 performers. Sometimes they were bigger. There was one, Ringling Brothers had a sideshow. And it was called that because when you walked up to the main show, it was off to the side. Mm-hmm. It was on the midway, and it was the show before the show. Mm-hmm. So before they opened the big circus tent, people would come out early in the day because they would watch the tent going up. They'd see the animals being brought in from the railroad car. They would sometimes be paraded down Main Street to attract more attention. Mm-hmm. They'd be feeding of the animals, the watering of the animals, and they'd be setting up the tent. And people would just watch this whole spectacle. And it was the highlight of their year in the small towns around the country when the circus came to town. Carnivals the same way. Carnivals got started. They were inspired by the Chicago World's Fair of 1893 that had this midway with all these interesting pavilions. Mm-hmm. That had various acts and attractions. And the idea is like, this makes so much money, let's take this on the road. Mm-hmm. So a bunch of independent show producers got together and created these touring carnivals that mm-hmm. toured on railroad trains, private trains that would carry hundreds of people and would tour all around and do the state fairs and other dates. And so the sideshow was a very important part because this was before rides as we know it kind of came to be. If you went to a carnival, there would be a Ferris wheel, mm-hmm. a merry-go-round or carousel, mm-hmm. and maybe one or two other rides. And the rest were live shows. There would be a magic show. There'd be, again, in a tent, someone like Harry Willard, the great Willard, with that kind of show that was in a big tent. And this traveling theater. There would be burlesque shows. And they all have outside talkers that would try to get you to come on inside. Come on inside and see the young ladies on the inside. They're going to shake it east. They're going to shake it west, but way down south, they shake it best. Get your ticket on the inside there. Come on in. We got seat belts on the chairs for the little ladies because they're going to get you. We're going to shock their modesty when they see the young ladies on the inside. We have the young ladies on the inside are going to do an amazing spectacle. It's called the Dance of the Virgin. Admittedly, they have to do it from memory, but still, it's a compelling spectacle. Come on in and see it. So, and there were a number of other shows. There were motordromes, which they still, and these, if you ever see a motordrome, this is one of the greatest things. There's still a handful of them out there. Mm-hmm. It is like a giant wine vat, mm-hmm. but I mean a wine vat that's like 25 feet across. And in the bottom of it are one or more guys on motorcycles that start riding around the circle and end up riding horizontally around the inside of the wall, the inner wall of this thing. And you stand on the top and look down, you've got these motorcycles and it's loud and it's exciting. And at the end of it, they always do a pitch saying, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed our spectacle of these stunt riders. These are some very, very brave men and women that have been doing this act. But I got to tell you, because of what they do, they can't get insurance. No one will insure them. And so they're on their own. And this is very dangerous. And invariably, they do get hurt. So what we're going to do right now is I would like you to show your generosity. Take some money out. It's got to be folded money. Can't be change. Take out $10, $20, however much. But don't make it less than $1 because anything less than $1 isn't really fair to them. Because like I say, this is all about their future. And hold it out. And you hold it out over the thing. And as they're riding around, they're snatching up the dollars while being, I mean, it's the most, it kills me that these things are so rare because it's so much more interesting than anything you're going to see on YouTube or TikTok or any of that. Yeah, it's wonderful. It all comes to you. But to see this stuff live and you smell the engines and the sound of it is deafening and it's just exciting. And the sideshow is the same way, is that you come in, there's a long catwalk stage against the wall, the long wall of the sideshow. And in the big shows, the circus shows, they would have a live band accompanying the acts. So there'd be this really great band, little brass band that'd be playing while someone swallows a sword, or someone is doing the magic act, or dancing with a giant snake or several snakes. And it was just amazing. Ringling Brothers, as I mentioned, had 33 performers in it and 16 acts that you could all see in 10 minutes.
Wow.
And the reason is because, like the show itself, you would go in and there'd be 3 acts going at one time. And so you go in and you just overcome with someone swallowing fire. Someone doing fire eating over here, the bearded lady kind of showing off and having people tug on it to show that it's real. You've got, fat man, fat lady, the natural born people, freaks. I'll use that term.
Yeah. But
that was actually a badge of honor, because those people gave credibility to everything else that was going on. The people who were born different than everyone else. And they were always paid the best in the show, because if you had a good freak on your show, you had a good show. That's what people would talk about. And so they were treated well. They often made so much money. I mean, this is so counterintuitive. They often made so much money that they ended up starting up their own show and working for themselves.
Wow.
So exploitation. They were exploiting people with disability, like they were working for themselves.
Yeah.
So who was doing the exploitation there?
What advice would you give to a younger performer wanting to learn and present sideshow material today?
You need a mentor.
Yeah.
You really, I did a video for Joe Stevens many, many years ago, but there was very few things I felt comfortable teaching. You can't really learn out of a book. I've been approached to write a book many times, and it's too dangerous because there's no flail factor in this.
Yeah.
I mean, you do fire eating wrong, and the least that's going to go wrong is you're going to burn your lips. The worst, you're going to cauterize your lungs and die.
Yeah.
And that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Cauterizing your lungs and dying. That's a bad thing.
It's many years ago, I joined a vaudeville variety show called the Comedy Barn. And the first thing that happened was they taught me to eat fire so that I could do it in the show. And I feel very proud of the fact that I learned to eat fire from someone, because it's one of the few skills that you can really trace back, because there's so few. You really do need to learn it from somebody else so that you can do it safely. And that I feel a part of a lineage.
And I always wonder if there was a genie in a bottle and it would grant, 3 wishes. One of them would be to go back any place in time and just see. Don't actually be. I just want to see the past, and I would like to go back to thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of years, and see the first person who went, I bet I could put fire in my mouth. I mean, what was that moment when somebody, and how much flail factor was it? It was like, I know Charlie, he died, but I think I could do it. There's Edgar setting his face on fire again. Or swallow a sword. Yeah. Who was the first guy that said this is a good idea? Yeah. And let's add to this. Not only did someone figure out how to do it, someone said, I'm going to make my living doing this. And the fact is, it goes back in Shakespeare, in The Tempest. Yeah. When I don't remember who the character is, it's one of the characters meets Caliban, and like, I'm going to take this strange creature back to civilization, because when they will not give a doit, which was like a penny, when they will not give a doit to relieve a lame beggar, they will lay out 10 to see a dead Indian. And what that means is, people were always interested in oddities. They're interested in the strange, the unusual, and they'd pay far more than to do something actually good with the money, helping out someone. They would pay 10 times as much to see this weird relic of, something unusual. So that just goes to show that if Shakespeare could make a joke about that, then it had to be so well established by that time.
Yeah.
That the late, in the 1500s, that it must go back at least 100 years before that or more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look back at when you go back to, we all sort of trace, magic back to, you say the first magic trick was the cups and balls done in ancient Egypt. I mean, it's even though they were doing stuff for religious ceremonies, or like tearing the head off of a goose and then putting it back on. It's not far off from, like some sort of oddity to prove power in a religious sense, but to
a lot of stuff comes, and many of the techniques of the sideshow can be traced back to the Middle East and to India, to the fakirs.
Yeah.
And I mean, if the Sufi, there's that amazing festival in which to demonstrate their holiness, the piercings that are done. There's one video I saw of a guy walking around with a bicycle impaled through his cheeks, and he's walking around carrying a bicycle.
Oh, that's wild.
And just the daggers and all this stuff, and that comes from as you were saying, the religious side of things, showing holiness, and so all that stuff comes from there, and then it became into the sort of the secular side of things.
I want to shift topics a little bit, because I've had on a number of members of the cast of heroes and villains and wizards that you have assembled for Speakeasy Magick, and
I created the show just to keep them off the streets, because they're not good people. They're not.
No.
It's sad. It's charity work. It's simply charity work.
It is such a fascinating concept, and I have yet to go, but it's one of those things that's on my list of, like, I need to get up there and just see it, because you've got like Rachel Wax and Mark Calabrese and Blaze Sarah and Eric Diddleman, and the list goes on of heavy hitters who are just in there crushing, but doing these really interesting acts. How did this come about, and did you just moved recently?
Yes. It came about as a fluke. I'd done a sideshow show back in 2004 called Carnival Knowledge, and it was me doing all the acts and telling the stories, as it was just been doing the sort of form and function and the anecdotes about the world of the sideshow, because it was disappearing then. All the old timers were retiring and dying off, and so I was like a love letter to this vanishing form of American popular entertainment that would make you look at it differently. What you think it is, you're wrong. And it was dispelling myths and entertaining in an entertaining way. And I loved doing the show. It was a lot of fun. It was grueling as hell, and there was only a handful of us that actually could do the show. If I wanted to bring anyone else in, take over for me, because I was doing all the acts. And we finished with the gorilla illusion, and with a twist on it, and it was just fun. It was just a glorious thing. And that we did a run for about 2 years of that, and then I took it on tour and did a few places, and then that kind of ground down. And I was like, okay, what next am I going to do? I want to do a sideshow. I mean, a seance show, because I was always intrigued by it. And when after seeing Penn and Teller first as the Asparagus Valley Cultural Society in San Francisco, and then that was a trio, and then they were the Penn and or Teller, and they came to New York, and I'd sort of been following their career. And when I saw that they were opening off Broadway in 1985, I grabbed a ticket to one of the first previews and saw it, and was blown away, because they were just doing something that no one else had done.
Yeah.
And with a dynamic and a sensibility and a take on it that no one else, in many ways, no one else has ever done since. I mean, they're so bespoke, they're so distinctive. So it inspired me. Like, I want to do a theater show. I want to have this kind of focus, and by putting in a theater, it shows respect for what you're doing. It shows your respect and demands respect from the public. If you're not hired entertainment. There's nothing wrong with walk around entertainment. Nothing. I mean, people make a lot of money doing this, whether it's at a party, an event, or a trade show or whatever. I don't demean that whatsoever. I mean, it is a glorious thing when it's done well. But when you do it in a theater, when you all of a sudden it is a destination, they're buying a ticket, there's expectations, and they want to see it. So I wanted to do a show, and I was either going to do a seance show or I was going to do a sideshow show, and I decided to do a sideshow thing. Did that, and then when that kind of ground out, I was like, okay, let's revisit the seance thing. And I worked on a show, created a thing called Dark Deceptions. It was all about spiritualistic fraud, about the tricks used by spirit mediums. And it was fine, but because I was honest with the audience and letting them know that this was all fraud, glorious fraud, but fraud nevertheless, it didn't frighten the people the way I wanted to. It didn't wig them out, didn't spook them the way I wanted to. So I decided to retool it and expand upon it. And a producer came in, Alan Schuster, who was the producer of Stomp, the most successful performance theater piece ever. Perfect person to produce it. And we needed a director, and we talked to various directors in New York, and they were just so condescending. They were like, "Oh, you're doing magic. I do theater.
Yeah.
And when I do Shakespeare, there is no world hunger. My Chekhov cures cancer. I don't know if you knew that. That's how important it is to my work. And you're doing a magic show."
Yeah.
And the fact is, the producer that I had didn't give a rat's ass about that pretension, because he was making millions where other theater producers were losing their shirt doing high-end stuff that just had great pretensions. So and Stomp is a wonderful show. There's a reason it ran for 25 years in New York, and it's still running around the country and around the world with touring companies. Anyway, so he said, "You need a director." And I said, "I have someone." And he said, "Who?" And I said, "Teller, Penn and Teller." Because I had already reached out to John and said, I need a director, and the producer's going to walk away if I can't find a director, and I think he would be perfect. And he said, "I'd love to work with you." So we ended up taking the original show, ripping it apart, and creating a show that became known as Play Dead. It took about 2 years of me going out to Vegas whenever Penn and Teller were on the road and come through New York. Teller and I would get together and have writing sessions, and we rewrote the whole thing and created this. Johnny Thompson, the late great Johnny Thompson, was our go-to for how the hell do we do these things. And we created the show. That show did well off Broadway. We mounted a production of it in Mexico City that ran for a couple of years. I did not do it, but there was a Mexican cast and translation. I went down there and mounted it with them, the producer down there. And we did it out of the Geffen in LA.
Yeah.
And it's an incredibly complicated show. Teller likes saying it is the most complicated off-Broadway show ever done. Technically, the intricacies of it are remarkable. And it looks simple. It looks like a bare stage with a bunch of just random crap on it, banker boxes and a table or two and chair and whatever. But everything is gaffed to the hilt. So I still get emails from somebody. "Oh, we have a small theater coming. Would you like to come in for a weekend and do Play Dead?" Like, no, honey, no. This is the thing. It's going to take a long time to load in, build, and we have to do sit down, but no sit down production. So because of that, it was very limited as where it could be done. And when we finished at the Geffen, we couldn't get anyone else interested in it. So all the props, all the tricks are sitting in the Penn and Teller warehouse in Vegas. Maybe someday it'll come back around. That's actually one of the reasons I came out here early, was to talk about future variation on it in another form, another medium. But anyway, so from that, Discovery Studios saw what I was doing and said, "Would you like to do a TV series?" Like, yes. So I did a TV series with them called True Nightmares. And we did 2 seasons of it, and there were politics involved in it that ended up making only 2 seasons. And when that came down, I was like, I need to do something. And I've always loved the Magic Castle Houdini seance. I'm I think that would work in New York as a standalone. I'm going to find a storefront somewhere
Mm-hmm.
and mount a theatrical seance. And I started looking around and I started thinking about the McKittrick Hotel, which is the home to a show called Sleep No More,
Yes.
which has been going on for about 14 years now.
Yeah.
And it is the biggest, most successful immersive theater show in the world,
Mm-hmm.
created by Punch Drunk, a wonderful company in England that pioneered immersive theater. And for those that don't know what immersive theater is, there's no proscenium. You are like ghosted into a reality. Everyone wears a mask, no one speaks, and you become anonymous. And the show, you wander around 100,000 square feet in this huge building that is like walking through movie sets. I mean, the detail is so amazing. It is a whole reality, and scenes are happening all around you. And you're following a character as they're running down a hallway, meeting up with another character, doing a scene, which is all done in movement, mm-hmm. non-verbal. It's all done in movement, dance. So you get this impressionistic quality of what's going on. And it's a telling of Macbeth. Mm-hmm. Shakespeare played Macbeth, but done in a noir, kind of like Alfred Hitchcock style. So it's murky and mysterious and intrigue of going on because there's murders happening and people betraying each other. And you're following this whole thing around, and everyone that goes to it has a full experience, but they don't have a complete one. They don't feel they've seen everything, so they want to go back. Yeah. It is the best example of that old phrase, always leave them wanting more.
Yes. And
they have, the producers of it have this huge building, this old warehouse building they converted and made into the McKittrick Hotel. Mm-hmm. Not a hotel, it's a set for the show. And I thought they've got to have an extra room there. Mm-hmm. I know these producers, I know these guys. And I reached out to them and said, I want to do a theatrical seance. I need a room. Mm-hmm. Do you have something like that? And they said, yeah, we probably do. Come on in. Mm-hmm. And I was going in for a meeting, August 13th, 2018. No, 2008. Forgive me. No, 2018. Excuse me. It's all a blur. The years are a blur. 2018. And a friend of mine, a magician from Chicago named Danny Doyle, he's a big beefy guy who spent a decade working at Julian's, mm-hmm. the legendary spot in Chicago. He went in there as a young man for a birthday party for his sister, or birthday dinner. And Charlie Julian, Matt Julian, founder, Charlie, his son, sat down and did a bunch of the Julian material. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, Charlie turned to the birthday girl and said, was that okay? And she said, oh, that was great. My brother does a lot of those tricks. And he turned to Danny, who was a big guy. He's about 6'6", about 300 pounds. Mm-hmm. But as Danny said, I was about this tall, as Charlie's looking at me. And Charlie said something extraordinary. He said, well, if you have any questions about what I did, here's my card. Give me a call tomorrow. We can talk about it.
Wow.
And he said, I'm in at about 11. And mm-hmm. Danny didn't want to seem too eager, so he waited till 11:03. He called and Charlie said, come on in. It was a Wednesday night. It was slow. They went into the back room and Charlie started showing him stuff. Mm-hmm. Said, here, I don't want to show you. Here, do it this way. You do you do this stuff? Let me see it. And he did it and said, oh, no, okay. Eugene Berger got that wrong. He said, this is the way, my dad taught me this way. I've been doing it all these years. And for 3 months, he learned all the Julian material taught by a Julian. He's the only member of the family to be taught by a Julian, the Julian material. That meat and potatoes, wonderful magic.
That's incredible.
At the end of the 3 months, Charlie said, I can't teach you anything more. Put a deck in his hand, dragged him out to the front room and said, go entertain those people. Went over, did a set for 2 women.
Yeah.
Walked over afterwards. Charlie said, how'd it go? He said, yeah, well, they kind of caught me palming out of the cart. He went, oh my God, did you die? Did the world end? He said, so what?
Yeah.
I know you're a very engaging guy. They had a good time. Yeah. I can tell. And then the women walked out and said, how was it, ladies? So it was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was really enjoyable. And they walked out and Danny was like, they didn't talk about the magic. He said, it's not about the magic.
No.
He said, it's a wonderful time and I know they'll be back. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
He said, and now you're working here every Wednesday night. And he started off doing one night a week and then worked up being a full-time magician for 10 years, the last 10 years of Schulien's.
Wow.
So anyway, he's in town. We're going to have lunch after this meeting. I said, come with me to the meeting because we're going to be looking at rooms, and it's always good to have another set of eyes. So we're walking around. We see a room, a storeroom that they're not using. Like, this would be perfect. And we sit down, we're talking details, and one of the producers turns and said, what's Danny's story? And I did a truncated version of what I just told you.
Yeah.
Julian's, and the guy went, oh, okay. And then we get back talking about the thing. And that producer said to Danny, who wasn't really listening because he was listening to our conversation, he said, do you have a card? And Danny thought he said, do you have cards? And, it's the old thing. Yeah. People, oh, you're a magician, do something.
Yeah.
And he misheard what Arthur, the producer, said. And he went, well, I normally don't carry a deck, but I was actually working on something earlier. Sure. And he did 10 minutes of magic. And the producer was like, we need to do that here.
Yeah.
So what do you mean? So we have a couple of lounges and we could do some sort of magic. And I said, well, if we put tables together and had a group of people, strangers, sitting at the table together, tables of like 10, we could have magicians come and sit down and do a set, which is actually very Schulien-like because people would be eating their dinner, and when they'd finished, Charlie would sit down at the table and do his set and then get up and leave. I said, so we'll do something like that. We'll have them sit down, magician, and they'll do 10 to 15 minutes of magic. They will get up and then someone else will sit down, and we'll do some things on the stage to break things up. And we'll have this whole thing where you don't know what's going to happen next. And as I'm talking about this, I'm casting it in my mind of who I wanted to put in. And I wanted a mix of magicians, some pure sleight of hand, some strong character individual like Mark Calabrese, mentalist, had to have a mentalist, wanted people that could do card material or limited card material. And I started putting it together in my mind, and the producers were willing to pay well, not the going corporate rate, but in much better than what you would expect for a showcase, so that the guys and gals would commit to being there on a regular basis. And the rule is that if anyone pays you $1 more to be somewhere else for a gig, take it.
Yeah.
And I have a roster of 40 magicians. 40.
Yeah.
Because it's New York and there are that many good people out there.
Yeah.
And so when Jason Saran is not available, Eric Diddleman comes in. And when Eric's not available, Adam Rubin comes in. And when, Adam's not available, Max, Mysterious Max, from the wonderful magician, mentalist from the Ukraine.
I recently met him. He's phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good example. And, if Mark isn't available and I want someone that's going to do strong card stuff, I'll bring in Blaze, Sarah.
Yeah.
And they're very different, but it's because I don't want, I could easily book, and I could really almost book in any town, having a kind of engaging, nice, bland guy in a nice suit sitting down doing card tricks.
Yeah.
And then he gets up and another person in a good suit sits down and does card tricks, because that's the meat and potatoes of the corporate market, the walk around market. That's what everyone does. And everyone has their own little take on it. And I don't mean to say it, except that to the public, it's card trick after card trick after card trick.
Yeah.
So I created that in like 5 minutes, the form of the show. And then they said, okay, well, let's do it Friday. I'm like, no, this is Monday. But what do you mean Friday? I said, can we push it off a little bit? Because I want to make sure you're not going to lose money. They go, we're not going to lose money. I go, yeah, I've heard that before. I said, I want to make sure people are going to be in the room. Oh, we'll make sure there's people in the room. People will come to this. Like, yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Except that with this operation, they had 10 years, well, not quite 10 years of people coming to Sleep No More.
Yeah.
400 people a night paying good money to see Sleep No More.
So it was
7 shows a week, and they had that mailing list.
Yeah.
And there are people that have seen Sleep No More 100 times. 100 times.
Yeah.
And so to this rarefied list, they sent out an email saying, we have a new show. No one knows about it. Would you like to buy a ticket for $100?
Wow.
They went, yes.
Wow.
And it sold out in 5 minutes. The first show sold out in 5 minutes. First 4 months we were sold out. You couldn't get a ticket to it, which created this whole buzz of like, what the hell are they doing in the McKittrick?
Yeah.
What the hell is this thing? It's a magic show. We've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
Now we're coming up on a 6th anniversary in August.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And the thing about it is it's been so successful that about a year ago, the producers decided that an opportunity came for another property, not at the McKittrick, that they could take over. And so they took over that property across town and made it into a real speakeasy. It got the name Speakeasy Magick because the marketing person was like looking at this room with these kind of shadowy things going on, and the room is hazed.
Yeah.
So it seems smoky, even though it's not smoky.
Yeah.
And the whole take has an edge on it. And he said, this is like being in a speakeasy.
Yeah.
And we're doing magic. And since the McKittrick has this kind of supernatural quality about it, I decided to add a K to magic.
Yeah.
Using the archaic spelling of it. And that's how Speakeasy Magick got its name.
That's amazing. And well, I'm going to be sure to put a link in the show description so that people can check it out. Todd, I think we are about out of time for right now, so I'm going to have you back on because I can't wait to hear more stories from you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
And there's so many things coming up. I came out here early, as I said, a couple days early to have meetings, really very productive meetings for projects that will never happen. But you never know. You never know. Like I say, I walked in to talk about a seance room, which never happened, by the way. We never created. Actually, I did create the seance room, but then because of some political things that are happening, I never got it opened. So I have a whole seance thing. The irony of which we're now putting in a magic castle for the Houdini seance. So it's this weird kind of incestuous circular thing that is just nothing but mayhem.
That's incredible. Well, thanks again, and I'm going to get you back on soon to hear more incredible stories.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's going to do it for this week, kids. Thanks so much to Todd Robbins for being on the show, and thanks to you for listening. Just as a quick reminder, Nick and I love hearing from the listeners, so be sure to send us topics you want us to talk about. We put a lot of content out there and love getting feedback so we can make you the best and most informative stuff around. As always, we're a weekly podcast, so be sure to like and subscribe, as well as share your favorite episodes on the social media platform that you are looking for used furniture to put in your new house. If you want to reach out to me about anything on this week's show, you'll have to slip it into an Amazon Prime box, because I bought a new house and I've basically been furnishing it with Amazon and Facebook Marketplace. Please buy some of my effects. I need a coffee table. But if new house decor isn't your cup of tea, you can always reach out to me on Instagram at Erik Tait. That's at ERIKTAIT. From me and everyone else here at the P3 Magic Studios, practice, perform.